This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, April 15th, 2025, Tax Day. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
El Salvador's president says he will not be returning a Maryland man wrongly deported to the Central American nation. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
A 5.2 magnitude earthquake shook Southern California Monday morning.
I noticed the shaking.
I'm Julie Walker.
The Trump administration cuts funding to another Ivy League school. This time, it's Harvard. I'm Jeff McKay.
A stretch of land along the southern border could be used for federal authorities to arrest illegal immigrants. I'm Clayton Neville.
Stocks coming off a winning day after President Trump hinted at a flip-flop on some tariffs for electronics and autos. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Food and beverage giant PepsiCo has agreed to meet with civil rights advocates from the National Action Network. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
All ahead on America in the Morning. Saying that President Trump has 350 million Americans to liberate by ending crime, the president of El Salvador became the latest head of state to visit the White House. Trump cabinet officials say the return of a Maryland resident deported in what some Trump officials have acknowledged was an administrative error is now a matter for the government of El Salvador. The latest from correspondent Sagar Meghani.
I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple.
El Salvador's president says he will not be returning a Maryland man wrongly deported to the Central American nation last month. The Trump administration says Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a violent criminal and a citizen of El Salvador, and despite court orders to get him back, says returning him is up to President Nayib Bukele. Asked if he will,
the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
You can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
If Bukele changes his mind,
if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
But Attorney General Pam Bondi emphasizes Abrego Garcia was in the U.S. illegally.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs.
They both spoke in the Oval Office as Bukele met with President Trump. The two men have become close partners in the administration's mass deportation efforts, with Bukele putting hundreds of immigrants into a gang prison.
What they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The earth moved under the feet of millions in Southern California, which was rocked by a strong earthquake centered near San Diego Monday. Correspondent Julie Walker reports.
A 5.2 magnitude earthquake shook Southern California Monday morning, centered near the town of Julian. USGS seismologist Elizabeth Cochran in California says it was felt far and wide and rattled people, but there are no reports of major injuries.
So folks fairly close to this magnitude 5.2 describe the ground shaking as being very strong. What that means is that we might not expect damage to buildings that are well built, but that the shaking itself could be quite frightening. I noticed the shaking, but it was not frightening. It was sort of a minor rocking of the building.
She says the earthquake was an aftershock from Sunday's 3.3 magnitude quake along the same Elsinore fault, but
the magnitude 5.2, now that it has occurred, we now call it the main shock because it's the largest earthquake, and we now call everything that happened yesterday foreshocks.
Cochran says to expect even more aftershocks.
Historically, we haven't seen any large sort of ground breaking or what we call surface rupturing earthquakes occurring along this fault. Additionally, there's typically it's been quiet. It has relatively little seismicity on it, very few earthquakes. Of course, there was an earthquake. It's not that unexpected that we should occasionally have earthquakes like the one we saw occurring on this fault.
I'm Julie Walker.
Harvard professors sue the government when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Here's your mid-April forecast for Tuesday with AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
We are moving well into the month of April now, and severe thunderstorms will ramp up generally as we continue through the spring, but there will be a small break today from those types of storms. The storm that did produce a few severe thunderstorms yesterday through the Ohio Valley into Virginia that continued into last night, and a few showers and rumbles of thunders from that same system could continue across the northeast from eastern Pennsylvania into southern New England. A few of these storms could have some small hail. Showers will extend westward through the rest of the northeast into parts of the middle Atlantic and much of the Great Lakes. This will develop as much colder air continues to build into the region. A few areas will change over to snow first thing this morning, and there could be an inch or two of accumulation in parts of northern Michigan today, and then shifting into parts of New York and Pennsylvania tonight. And this could lead to some slippery travel into Wednesday morning. Winds from this same system will be quite strong with frequent gusts up to 40 miles per hour and an AccuWeather local storm max of 65 miles per hour. Highs in the Great Lakes will be in the 30s and 40s, which is about 10 to 20 degrees below the historical average. Outside of that, there'll be a few scattered afternoon thunderstorms in the Rockies around Colorado into New Mexico and another area around the Sierra Nevada. The rest of the nation otherwise is going to be rather quiet, with most areas having a decent amount of sunshine. The west again will be warm with highs mostly in the 70s in the north, though a little cooler at the coast, and once again heading into the 90s across Southern California and the deserts into the desert Southwest. That's the weather across America. It'll be a warm day in Great Falls, Montana, with partly sunny skies and a high of 72. Buffalo, New York will be a little chillier with mostly cloudy skies and a couple of showers and a high of 46. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Listen on your preferred platform by searching America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. After Harvard University challenged President Trump by saying they would reject the administration's demands for changes to admissions and DEI policy, the Department of Education froze more than $2 billion in school funding. America in the Morning's Jeff McKay has a closer look.
It was during the day on Monday that Harvard University flatly rejected demands by the Trump administration to eliminate all DEI programs, as well as screen international students for ideological concerns, including anti-Semitism. Harvard, which receives roughly $9 billion in federal funding grants, including for research in medicine, science, and engineering, released a statement saying, quote, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue." Soon after Harvard University President Alan Garber's statement, the U.S. General Services Administration and the Department of Education responded with a statement of their own, freezing $2.2 billion in multi-year grants and another $60 million in contract value to Harvard. The funding freeze is a small part of Harvard University's funding pie. Harvard currently has an endowment fund in excess of $53 billion, the highest of any school in the nation. In a posting on X, Harvard wrote, quote, "Neither Harvard nor any other private institution can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government." I'm Jeff McKay in Washington.
The Trump administration is considering using a stretch of land along the U.S.-Mexico border to prevent illegal entry. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
It's part of President Trump's pledge to secure the southern border. In places like Texas, state troopers are already arresting migrants who enter the country illegally, that at the direction of the state's governor. And encounters happen every day.
When I first got on it, initially, where we jumped him, I saw like a cowboy boot, and it had like a big racetrack with fine lines.
President Trump now reportedly considering using a corridor known as the Roosevelt Reservation, which is a 60-foot buffer zone along a portion of the border from New Mexico to California, as a base controlled by the Army. The president's turning the land over to the Department of Defense, and critics say the move is an attempt by the Trump administration to get around a federal law that prohibits U.S. troops from being used in domestic law enforcement on American soil. But if troops are providing security for land that's part of an Army base, they can perform that role and make arrests. The anticipated move expected to face legal challenges. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, Trump allowances for the auto industry after these messages. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. On how we'll find markets opening this morning, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a wobbly day for stocks yesterday, but a win in the end after President Trump hinted he may flip-flop on some tariffs. Major averages all added more than 1%. President Trump saying he may do a flip-flop on auto tariffs, at least some of them, speaking at the White House.
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
Automaker shares popped on this. Ford up 4%, GM up about 3%, Jeep maker Stellantis up nearly 2%. Apple shares added 2% yesterday on what investors believe are a carve-out for tariffs on electronics from the White House. CEO Tim Cook working to make that happen.
Remember, going into the Trump administration, Cook had made that $1 million donation to the inauguration. He also showed up at the inauguration with all those other big tech CEOs. Also gone, guys, no more chatter about building iPhones in the USA, for now at least. So right now, this is great news. Just 20% instead of 145% in China. Again, at least 80 to 90% of iPhones are still made in China. That is still going to be a problem.
CNBC's Steve Kovac. Meantime, a group of U.S. businesses has sued to block the Trump tariffs, saying trade deficits are not an emergency and never have been. The White House is using an emergency order as its source of power to place tariffs. A major Wall Street firm out with caution for investors.
Morgan Stanley today says, quote, investors should prepare to be fooled many more times. They allude to the consistent inconsistencies. The worst may be over, but even if it is, they suggest we're not out of the woods just yet.
CNBC's Scott Wapner. Unemployment fears for Americans have hit their worst levels since COVID. Amid the Trump tariff turmoil, the new consumer survey from the New York Fed shows almost half believe the unemployment rate will be higher a year from now.
This could reflect just a general decline in sentiment, or it could actually reflect people's experience in the job market finding, or in this case, not finding jobs. So we just want to watch that. It's something to be careful about. Consumer sentiment is way down, but the CNBC NRF retail monitor came back modestly from 2 months of decline. So remember, there's how people feel and what they do, and sometimes those two can be disconnected.
CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Leisman. On today's watch list, we get earnings from Bank of America, Citigroup, and United Airlines, to name a few. EU trade countermeasures against the U.S. go into effect today, and it's tax deadline day.
Thanks for the reminder, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, boycott, so says Reverend Al Sharpton after these messages. A major company has agreed to meet with Reverend Al Sharpton, and it has to do with DEI rules and a potential boycott. Lisa Dwyer reports.
Food and beverage giant PepsiCo has agreed to meet with civil rights advocates from the National Action Network to discuss the company's recent decision to roll back some of its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The Reverend Al Sharpton says that the agreement to meet comes after his April 4th letter threatening to lead a boycott against the company. PepsiCo is one of the largest food and beverage companies in North America, whose brands include Gatorade, Lay's potato chips, Doritos, Mountain Dew, as well as Pepsi. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
It's tax day, with most taxpayers staring down today's deadline. Many will ask for an extension or reside in one of the 13 states where the IRS has extended the filing cutoff date due to natural disasters in those areas. The IRS says that all residents of Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee qualify for an extension because of storms, flooding, and tornadoes that affected those states starting April 2nd, and residents of those states will now have until November 3rd, 2025, to file and pay any taxes that would have otherwise been due before the extended deadline. Residents in only certain parts of Alaska, New Mexico, and Virginia have until May 1st to file, and all taxpayers in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina have been extended to May 1st. Certain residents of West Virginia and the Los Angeles area have also been extended into the fall. Taxes, one of the two certainties of life, with paying the government being the better of the two choices. America in the Morning for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Trump and the president of El Salvador say they refuse to bring a man wrongfully deported to that country back to the U.S. I'm John Stolness in Washington.
The suspect in the arson attack on the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania says he was harboring hatred. I'm Clayton Neville.
Russia is defending a Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Two key pieces from the tourist helicopter which fell apart over the Hudson River are found. I'm Bob Brown.
NVIDIA is moving AI chip production to the United States. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Blue Origin launches an all-female celebrity crew.
New Shepard has cleared the tower.
I'm Julie Walker.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. On the watch for severe thunderstorms today. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A storm centered in southern Canada will continue to push colder air through the Great Lakes into the northeast. As much colder air continues to build into the region, a few areas of showers will change over to snow first thing this morning, and there could be an inch or two of accumulation in parts of northern Michigan today. And then as that colder air continues to move in tonight, parts of western New York and Pennsylvania could also see some accumulation, which could lead to some slippery travel into Wednesday morning. We're getting a little break from the severe weather today, but the storm, the same storm that produced severe weather yesterday through the Ohio Valley into Virginia and continued into last night, will still cause some showers and a few rumbles of thunder into the northeast from eastern Pennsylvania into southern New England. A few of these storms could have some small hail. Additional showers will also form through the rest of New York into New England, as well as westward into the southern Great Lakes. Winds from this same storm will also be quite strong, with frequent gusts of 40 miles per hour and an AccuWeather local storm max of 65 miles per hour. Highs in parts of the Great Lakes will be in the 30s and 40s, or about 10 to 20 degrees below the historical average. Outside of that, there will be a few scattered afternoon thunderstorms in the Rockies, around Colorado into New Mexico, and another area around the Sierra Nevada. The rest of the nation is otherwise going to be rather quiet, with most areas having plenty of sunshine. The west will remain warm with highs in the 70s, mostly in the north, a little bit cooler along the coast, and once again heading into the 90s across southern California deserts into the desert southwest. The plains will not be as warm as yesterday, but still largely in the 70s, 80s, and then farther north will be warming up a little bit from yesterday's cool weather, jumping nearly 20 degrees in a few places. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. President Trump welcomed the ardent Trump supporter and conservative president of El Salvador for a White House visit, where the main topic of conversation surrounded the return of a man deported from the U.S. to a notorious El Salvadorian jail last month. John Stolnis has the latest from Washington.
Speaking in the Oval Office, the president welcoming Bukele to the White House.
Mr. President, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
You're doing incredibly for your country, and we appreciate working with you because you want to stop crime, and so do we.
President Bukele's visit comes as his nation has become a vital partner to the Trump White House's deportation plans, with Bukele placing hundreds of suspected gang members deported from the United States in his controversial and state-of-the-art maximum security gang prison facility. One of those recently deported was a Maryland man named Abrego Garcia, who the Supreme Court said last week should be returned to the United States and that the Trump administration should facilitate his return immediately. However, Attorney General Pam Bondi said 2 courts agreed Garcia was a member of the MS-13 gang and that returning him wasn't up to them.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
President Bukele confirms he has no plans of returning Garcia.
How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
The U.S. has categorized MS-13 as a foreign terror organization. Garcia's lawyers say no proof has been offered that he was affiliated with that gang. Since March, Bukele has accepted more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants and put them behind bars. The U.S. will pay El Salvador about $6 million a year to do so. The 2 leaders also discussed transgender athletes, with both leaders calling it an abuse of women to allow transgender men to compete in women's sports. President Trump also claiming economic victory after the markets reacted positively yesterday to reversing course on his Liberation Day tariffs. John Stolnis, Washington.
We're learning more about the scope of the damage and the suspect in the weekend arson attack on the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
38-year-old Cody Balmer's facing attempted murder, arson, and terrorism charges. He was denied bond and told police that he was harboring hatred for Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro before throwing 2 Molotov cocktails into the governor's mansion while Shapiro and his family were sleeping. Investigators say political hatred has gone way too far.
It's got to stop before you get to the point where you want to firebomb an elected official or anybody for that matter.
Harrisburg Fire Chief Brian Interline called the suspect a domestic terrorist.
And I hope that he spends a lot of time behind jail for the heinous acts that he performed here in our capital city that put not only the first family, but my firefighters at risk.
The chief estimated the damage at the governor's mansion to be in the millions. The 29,000 square foot home was completed along the Susquehanna River waterfront in the late 1960s. It's believed a door being closed to the main state dining room could have saved lives and prevented further damage.
It would have been a totally different fire and a totally different outcome, most likely, had that door not been closed.
President Trump was asked about the fire at the home of the Democratic governor.
The attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Court documents show that Balmer told police he planned to beat Governor Shapiro with a small sledgehammer if he came across him. The suspect's mother said that she tried to get her son help for mental health issues before the attack, but she said nobody would help. She said her son had bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. I'm Clayton Neville.
International condemnation of a Russian military strike in Ukraine just east of the Russian-Ukrainian border that killed or wounded over 140 people. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports the attack comes as Volodymyr Zelensky invited President Trump to visit Kyiv before any deal is struck with Vladimir Putin.
We see the deadliest attacks. In this war, civilians are being killed, and of course, it is already 1 month into this period where Ukraine agreed to unconditional ceasefire. We haven't seen that from the Russia side.
Russia is defending a Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine, even as it faces international condemnation. Ukraine says the missile strike in Sumy killed nearly 36 people, including children, the second large-scale attack that claims civilian lives in about a week. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the strikes targeted a Ukrainian military officer gathering, but his Lithuanian counterpart calls the strike a humiliation to those trying to reach a ceasefire.
This is the war crime by definition.
Yesterday,
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. Millions of people are dead that should be alive. Cities are being destroyed all over Ukraine. The whole culture is gone. We're certainly very severely hurt.
Today, President Trump refused to criticize the strike.
President Zelensky served out his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries.
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles.
And says the real mistake was letting the war start in the first place, blaming 3 people.
That's a war that should have never been allowed to start, and Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
New details surrounding the helicopter crash in the Hudson River, and computer manufacturer returns to the U.S. Those stories and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Federal investigators appear to be closer to finding the cause of last week's deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River in New York City. Following the latest, correspondent Bob Brown.
2 key mechanical components for the tourism helicopter, which broke apart in the air, have been pulled from the Hudson River. NTSB investigators say the main rotor blade is one of the pieces found, which could likely lead to answers as to why the chopper completely fell apart, sending the fuselage crashing into the water, killing 6 people, 3 young children and their parents, including the pilot. WABC TV in New York talking with tourists who continue to book helicopter tours and those who've decided not to tour by air.
What do you want? Of course we think about it, but we hope it won't happen today.
We thought about it weeks before we arrived, but then we heard about it, and my mom said to me, don't take a ride by a helicopter.
New York Senator Chuck Schumer is calling for so-called ramp inspections.
A ramp inspection is a surprise inspection. They show up unannounced and check if things are on the level and the helicopters are doing the right thing.
The FAA says the company who owns the helicopter, New York Helicopter Tours, is shutting down immediately. The FAA will launch a review of its license and safety record. The company reportedly had 2 accidents before Thursday's deadly crash. Bob Brown, New York.
Police arrest a 25-year-old man for allegedly sending threatening messages to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and her husband. Fox News is reporting that Ali Akbar Mohammed Amin was arrested by authorities, and the Department of Justice says threats including Amin allegedly writing, quote, "You and your family are going to die soon, and I will personally do the job if necessary." End quote. Police in Georgia apprehended Amin in the town of Lilburn, northeast of Atlanta. Federal agents recovered a firearm while executing a warrant to search Amin's home. Shifting gears, in Yemen, members of the Iranian-backed Houthis say a suspected U.S. airstrike has killed at least 6 people. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports.
Strikes on Yemen's capital. In addition to the deaths, wounded over 20 people, while the Houthis claim their forces shot down an American MQ-9 Reaper drone. Footage aired by the Houthis' Al Masirah satellite news channel showed firefighters spraying water on a raging fire they described as being sparked by the airstrikes. Rubble litters the street as rescuers carry one person away from the site, which the rebels claim was a ceramics factory in a Banamata neighbourhood of Sana'a, the capital. Since its start nearly a month ago, the US campaign has killed over 120 people, according to the Houthi Health Ministry casualty figures. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from revoking the legal status and work permits of the more than 530,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela who flew into the United States during former President Joe Biden's time in office. In the order, the federal judge appointed by Barack Obama wrote that each migrant needs to have an individualized case-by-case review. Biden created the CHNV program in 2023 using his executive parole authority. Program was originally launched in 2022 and initially only applied to Venezuelans before it was expanded to additional countries. The program was temporarily paused after a review uncovered widespread fraud after several recipients were arrested for high-profile crimes. America in the Morning continues. In a bold move, NVIDIA decides to bring its chip and AI supercomputer manufacturing to the United States. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech Report.
NVIDIA said on a post on their website that they have started a Blackwell production at a chip manufacturing plant in Phoenix and superconductor manufacturing plants in Texas, with Foxconn in Houston and Wistron in Dallas. The company said NVIDIA's AI supercomputers will serve as the engine for AI factories and a new type of data center created for the sole purpose of processing artificial intelligence. NVIDIA believes that manufacturing in the U.S. will create hundreds of thousands of jobs and drive trillions of dollars in economic security over the coming decades. Mass production at both plants is expected to proceed in the next 12 to 15 months, and they also plan on partnering with Taiwan-based company SPIL and Amaker for packaging and testing operations in Arizona. The White House calls NVIDIA's move the Trump effect in action and added that the move is paying off with trillions of dollars in new investments in the tech sector alone. For more tech news, find me at chuckpalm.com.
Here's sports with our Robert Workman.
Baseball Monday, the Rays lowered the boom on the Red Sox 16-1. Cameron Meisner had 2 of Tampa Bay's 4 home runs, and the Rays put up 9 runs in the third inning without benefit of the long ball. So much scoring last night. The first-place Padres clobbered the Cubs 10-4 to improve to 14-3 and 11-0 at home. Fernando Tatis Jr. went deep twice. Giants spotted the Phillies an early lead, then belted 3 homers for a 10-4 win. Pirates and Paul Skeens nailed the Nationals 10-3. Austin Riley homered twice to lead the Braves over the Blue Jays 8-4. Juan Soto launched one for the Mets in a 5-1 win over the Twins.
We're trying to play team baseball right here. So whenever I got to take my walks, I'm going to take my walks. That's baseball. Things are going to happen.
Yankees got all of their runs on solo shots as they beat the Royals 4-1. Dodgers down the Rockies 5-3. Long balls for Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani. Tigers trounced the Brewers 9-1. Detroit owns the best mark in the AL. And the Cardinals kicked some Astros 8-3. NHL, the Blackhawks shaded the Canadiens 4-3 in a shootout. Montreal still 1 point away from locking up that last wild card in the East. 3 teams are vying for the 2 open wild cards out west, but none of them played last night. Black Monday claimed only one NBA coach. The Suns sacked Mike Budenholzer just 1 season into a 5-year, $50 million contract. The next man up in Phoenix will be their 4th coach in as many seasons. And Connecticut star Paige Beckers was chosen first in the WNBA draft by the Dallas Wings. She becomes the 6th player ever to go straight from the national championship to the top of the draft board. That's Tuesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. The next chapter for Harry Potter. That and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. From the big screen to television, some of the new cast of the Harry Potter series is being announced. With the who's who at Hogwarts, here's Kevin Carr.
Warner Brothers and HBO has announced the new staff at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The upcoming series, based on J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books, is set to start filming this summer, and we now know who will be playing the main adult roles.
You should be careful, Thomas. Your own ambition has not gone unnoticed.
John Lithgow, who was most recently seen in the Oscar-winning film Conclave, has already been confirmed to play Headmaster Albus Dumbledore.
Ever fired your gun up in the air and gone, ah? No, I have not ever fired my gun up in the air and gone, ah.
On Monday, HBO further announced that Nick Frost, best known for films like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, will play Harry's half-giant friend, Rubeus Hagrid.
I met a girl as lonely as myself. We fixed up to get a place, sharing the rent and all that.
Oscar nominee Janet McTeer will play Minerva McGonagall.
He stole from him to pay off an increasing deficit, but he had no intention of paying him back, so instead he had him killed, him and his entire family.
And Papa Essiadu, known for his roles in I May Destroy You and Gangs of London, will play the ultimate grey character of the series, Severus Snape. All three actors had been rumored to be in talks for the roles before Monday's announcement. Other confirmed actors will include Paul Whitehouse as Hogwarts caretaker Argus Filch and Luke Thalen as Quirius Quirrell. Casting for the main children's roles of Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger has not yet been made public. I'm Kevin Carr.
An historic private launch by Blue Origin sent an all-female celebrity crew on their first space journey. Correspondent Julie Walker has the recap.
For every woman who's on this flight, it's about fulfilling something within themselves. For Gail, it's about overcoming this great fear of excitement.
Blue Origin launches an all-female celebrity crew with Katy Perry, Gail King, and Jeff Bezos' fiancé Lauren Sanchez, a helicopter pilot.
New Shepard has cleared the tower.
The New Shepard rocket blasting off Monday from West Texas for a 10-minute, fully automated ride, 66 miles up to the fringes of space and back.
Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon. That's amazing.
Wow, look at the blue line.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my That's our pink moon.
It was the latest wave in space tourism, where more of the rich and famous than ever before, or lucky and well-connected, can enter the zero-gravity realm traditionally dominated by professional astronauts. Blue Origin not saying how much the flight cost or who paid what. But it was the 11th human spaceflight for the Bezos company.
1, 2, 3, take it up space!
Woo! I'm Julie Walker.
And that's our show for this Tax Day 2025. America in the Morning for Tuesday, April 15th is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.